Hello, and welcome back to my reading of my book, Breadman. If you're just now joining us, I've already read chapters 1 through 10 on my channel before, so you can check out those videos right now. To give you a little bit of an update, we found out the man behind everything is Andy Campbell, David's best friend from childhood. At the end of the last chapter, David ran into Andy at a bakery, but Andy got away through time travel. He jumped to the year 2010, which is also where David jumped to at the end of chapter 10. Which brings us to Chapter 11. David was amazed. Almost everything looked exactly the same. Clothing styles changed, but only a small difference. From the clothing store off in the distance, he could tell a wedding dress isn't exactly what it used to be. The dress was shorter, like a skirt. He did notice that almost nobody was wearing glasses. Older men and women did, but not younger people. 4 years in the future is not that far off, man. It was late at night and very quiet. Andy was nowhere to be seen. David found a payphone nearby. He walked up to it and dialed a number. Agent Mulligan, NSA. This is David Larson. I can't find Andy anywhere. Use your code name, Breadman. This line may not be secure. Breadman? Who came up with that name? David asked. Susan removed the phone from her ear. This wasn't Breadman. This was David Larson on the case to find Andy Campbell 3 years ago. She recalled him using the watch to transport himself to the year 2010. There he was. She also knew that to this day, Andy Campbell has never been caught. Agent Larson, when you were transported through time, you didn't see Andy run off somewhere? No, when I got here, it was very quiet. Nobody was around. Okay, listen to me very carefully. He may still be in the area. Just keep your eyes open. Susan waited for a response, but there was none. She just heard a thud come from the other line. Finally, someone spoke through the line.
I'm sorry, Susan. I'm afraid you were too late.
Susan heard a click and just sat there. After a minute or two, she hung up the phone. ... There was nothing, just blackness filling the air. Then there was pain. David jolted his eyes open to see a needle sliding into his arm. He was strapped down to a chair with metal clasps. In front of him, there were 2 workers working on computers. On the floor next to them was a red stain. He presumed blood. A woman was injecting him with something. The doors at the end of the room opened wide, and Andy came in and walked down the steps.
That'll do, Miss Jones,
Andy said. The red-headed lady stood up and walked back out the way Andy came in.
Hello, David, or should I say Breadman? Oh, that's right. You haven't reached your glory yet, have you? You see, everyone in the world knows about you. You're the world's favorite guy, so to speak.
What do you want, Andy?
Miss Jones injected you with something that will give me your power.
Andy pointed to an identical seat to David's left.
All I have to do is sit in that seat, have Mr. Fletcher down there click a button, and your powers are directly transferred to me.
The NSA will save me. Andy started moving towards the identical seat and said,
You know, I thought about that. They only know you because you're a super soldier. If I take your powers, no one will remember a Breadman. You would never exist.
Andy sat down in the seat. Looking to Bruce, he said,
Let her rip.
As soon as Bruce pressed the button, sparks flew. David started screaming and clenching his fists in pain. He could feel his life leaving him. Energy was passing through the wires that the chairs were connected with. Andy was sitting back and letting every inch of power pass into his body. Finally, the procedure was finished. Andy got up from his seat and picked up the chair that he was sitting on and threw it straight to the other side of the room.
I've never felt so alive,
Andy proclaimed. He walked up to David, smiling. He said,
So tell me, how does it feel to be normal? How does it feel to be weak, just like everybody else in this world? Sucks, doesn't it?
He turned around and congratulated Bruce on his well-done work. Andy walked over to Bruce Fletcher's desk and picked up the phone. After dialing a few numbers, he finally spoke up.
Congratulations, we did it. That's correct. The operation was successful. You can come in now.
Andy turned to David and said,
You thought I was the only one behind all of this, didn't you? Well, you shall see in a moment how much you were wrong.
Suddenly, the doors at the end of the room opened up once more. This time around, it wasn't a man that walked through the doors. It was a woman. Although, this wasn't the same woman that David saw earlier. It was somebody else. She was in too dark of light to recognize. As soon as she walked up to David, David knew who it was. Once again, he was being betrayed. The woman laid her head upon Andy's shoulder. Grinning, the woman said,
Long time no see, Agent Larson.
David felt sick to his stomach when he looked into the eyes of his betrayer, Agent Susan Mulligan. Chapter 12. Before leaving the room once again, Andy gave Susan a peck on the cheek. The two have obviously been working together on this since the beginning. Susan, but why? David asked out of breath.
Like Andy said, kid, business is business. Andy has known about your powers as long as you two knew each other, even before you knew about them yourself. You see, your entire friendship with him has been a lie,
Susan said with a smile as she strode towards David, who was still strapped to the chair. That's a lie! David shouted.
On the contrary, Andy's father hired him to spy on you. After his father passed away, Andy continued his work.
Finally, she was in close enough range. David forced down his feet and picked the chair up. Using the chair as a bat, he swung his body around. The chair made perfect contact with Susan's jaw. As expected, Susan fell to the ground. Seconds later, David watched as Susan got back up. Facing David, she felt her jaw. That's when she felt the warm trickle of blood. The now angered Susan Mulligan grabbed David's head and headbutted him with her own head. Pretty sure that's how headbutting works. She then spun around, kicking David unconscious. Susan watched as the tied-up kid fell to the ground in agony. She then turned to Bruce Fletcher and said,
Keep an eye on him.
She then stormed out of the room. ... David sat straight up, waking instantly. He was in a holding cell of some kind, laying on a concrete mattress. It was very dark. The only thing he could see was very dim lighting protruding through small gaps at the end of the small room, presumably the door. The light then brightened. Somebody turned on a light outside the room. From what he could hear, the light footsteps coming in his directions were that of a girl. His first instincts were Susan. When the door opened, he saw that it was not Susan. It was the redhead who injected him earlier on. She didn't seem all that dangerous. Small frame, wearing bright colors instead of the dark, evil-looking colors villains usually wear, and relatively short.
Hi, my name is Cindy Jones. I'm Mr. Campbell's secretary.
Am I going to die? David said, sitting up straight on his bed. Cindy walked over and joined him on the concrete mattress. She reassured him with,
I am positive that they won't kill you. There would be no need for you to die.
She then took out a handkerchief and patted his forehead. David took this time to realize that Cindy could help him. He grabbed her arm and took her hand off his head. Still holding them, he said, Cindy, you need to save me.
No, I wish I could, but Mr. Campbell would have my head, literally, if I did.
I won't let him hurt you, I promise.
But how do you know? You don't have your power anymore.
Cindy, I will get my power back.
Well, even if I could break you out, there's way too many guards. They're everywhere that I look.
Look, Cindy, all I need you to do is get my time watch back for me. Can you do that?
I think I can. No promises, though.
Thank you so much. I'll wait here for you. With that, Cindy slipped out the door again and locked it. The last thing David heard was those light footsteps fading away. ... The last document printed, and Samuel Beckett grabbed the pile of papers and slid them into a manila folder. Walking past colorless desks and cabinets, Sam walked up to an all-too-familiar desk. Agent Susan Mulligan. Susan looked hard at work, typing relentlessly at her computer. Sam was about to pass her and head back to his own desk when he noticed something. Hey, Sue, what'd you do? Fall asleep on your desk? Sam said this, pointing at the red mark on the opposite side of her face.
I was out in the field and I was attacked.
Sam remembered Susan wasn't at her desk until minutes ago. Plus, it's also true that field agents were attacked from time to time. That's what I hear anyways. Sorry, Sue. Well, I hope you get better. Susan thanked him, and he walked away, heading back to his own desk. Susan watched as Sam set the folder on his desk and sat down. When he noticed Susan peering at him, he pointed at her and gave her a wink before getting back to work. Susan smiled and turned around. After rolling her eyes, she got back to work as well. ... The cell door opened again. Cindy looked behind her, and back to David. She passed him the watch. As David was slipping the watch on, Cindy spoke up.
Hurry back. It will not take long before somebody notices I set you free.
Don't worry. David then clicked a button, and he was off. He knew exactly where he had to go. In order for everything to begin setting back, he had to go back to the beginning. He had to go to the year 1990. Finally, he made it to the year 1990. Landing in the middle of the street, he had no idea how he was supposed to get to the place he intended for. Just then, a door opened on the side of a building. David ran and hid behind a car. Emerging from the open door was a familiar face. His father. And that's it! Chapters 11 and 12. Not much to talk about with these two chapters, though it might get a little bit of an endgame vibe there, as far as getting cornered and then having no other option but to time travel to fix things. Samuel Beckett was kind of based off of, I think, the first friend that I ever had in life. His name was Sam. I don't remember too much about him, other than his name. And there's obviously a couple of plot holes in these chapters, the main one being Susan being a bad guy. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense based off of how she was acting in some previous chapters and even the beginning of that chapter itself, but it's something that you kind of have to take with a grain of salt. I also watched a lot of 24 in my life, and in 24, every single season, I swear to you, there was always like a mole. And I liked the idea of moles, so I made her a mole, and now she's a bad guy. There you go. If you guys like those chapters, make sure that you tell me in the comments down below. Tell me what you think's going to happen next, and tell me if you like it. enough to hear, chapter 13, unlucky number 13. Until then, guys, peace out.